Good morning, afternoon, or evening, ladies and gentlemen, all in crypto here, and welcome back, guys, for another daily cryptocurrency market update. I have so much to cover in this video as we start a new week for the markets. You know, we know that Bitcoin has seen a pretty harsh rejection from 30K. 30K should always have been suspected as resistance. And that's exactly what's happened. I think this is probably one of the most predictable pullbacks that we've seen. And we've looked at everything that led into this, your ascending structure, how you were having marginally higher highs, and there was lots of warning signs around 30K. But the real question, I guess, is this the start of something greater and something more than just a pullback from the trend that we've seen in place from the start of the year? That's something that we're going to be trying to ask and answer in this video. We do have a lot to get into, though, by the way, guys. It is a big week for the stock market. You can see in front of you, you have all of the earnings coming out for this week alone. And you can see some massive ones in there, like Microsoft, like Alphabet. You got things like McDonald's, General Motors, General Electric, Coca-Cola, First Republic Bank. That one will be interesting. Activision, MasterCard, so on and so forth. So expect some volatility. And actually, I want to look at a few things because we see a rising appetite for protection against the NDX, which is the NASDAQ 100. So traders right now are betting on right about a 10% drop for this, as it's at a key level. You've kind of put in a double top here. And we've also done cross-market analysis of gold, the S&P, linked it to Bitcoin before we had even rejected off 30K and said, actually, this gives confluence to the fact that 30K is going to act as resistance because you have other markets also that are kind of in this risk category or anti-fit category that are at this kind of hurdle, if you will. You know, often you need to take a few steps back in order to get a running start and clear the hurdle. We also are going to take a little bit of a look at the VIX. We do have a lot to go into. I may get into a little bit of the banking sort of situation, which is very interesting, but we may not have time. Credit Suisse logged asset outflow of more than $68 billion during the first quarter collapse. Also, Ethereum ICO participants awaken after 7.7 years of dormancy. Is this Ethereum whale about to dump on the market? And why have they woken up all of a sudden? Very interesting. And then we may talk a little bit about China's debt. But we've got a lot to get into. Let's focus on Bitcoin. Let's focus on the chart. And is history about to repeat? I think Bitcoin's in a very similar situation to what it was back in March 2020. And I'm going to show you that now. So we're going to put this on log. We're going to take it off auto. And essentially, you know, I think you could be setting up very similarly here in regards to what's taking place. You know, we've got this head and shoulders that we're looking at. And ultimately, this is your left shoulder, right shoulder, head and then right shoulder. And then what you'll notice is you had this, there's something called nestling that takes place. And you'll notice that everything looks like head and shoulders in retrospect. Markets do move. They move to the upside and downside in this kind of a manner. You can see you've got a head and shoulders in here that broke to the upside. And then you come back and you retest it, which is essentially what I think. It's a probability for Bitcoin to come back and retest this neckline. So your neckline is 25K. Providing you don't break this convincingly with momentum and stay below it, I think you're looking for more upside. Now, that's a pretty bad scenario. I think there are definitely similarities between what Bitcoin did here, and then it formed a sort of broader nestling head and shoulders. You know, you can see you've got head and shoulders here. You potentially could say you've got one here if you drop down the smaller time frames. But ultimately, I genuinely do believe that this is all going to resolve to the upside. You know, it's very expected for Bitcoin to run into resistance at 30K. That's exactly what it's done. And ultimately, I do believe it will sort itself out. Whether it sorts itself out by coming down here and getting that run up to the upside, or whether it sort of sorts itself out here, is still to be seen. It's a very volatile market. You know, I wouldn't short this personally, Not at this point. I think it's very interesting to me just how fast sentiment changed. You've got a lot of big Twitter traders out there that are now literally trying to chop this up as a range and calling for, deviation and this. We will see. However, these same Twitter traders have literally shorted every single pause that we've had and called it a local top from 15k. So just take what they're saying with a pinch of salt. But I ultimately can see Bitcoin doing a very similar thing to what it did over here. I do believe that the trend that's now in place, and I did an extensive Patreon meeting last night where we looked at the macro. Anyone that's interested in joining the Patreon, there's a link in the description. We really get into interest rates. We really get into the Fed, what they're doing, and kind of trying to see if there's any kind of historical data that can help us navigate where we are in regards to the macro and where we might be going. And personally, the conclusion that I've came up with is, and we've got invalidation points for this, that actually markets are going to do quite well this year under a certain set of criteria. And one of those set of criteria that we spoke about on the channel is rates going flat. Look at what markets have done historically when the 2-year yields have topped out and rates go flat. I think there's a macro backdrop that now supports the technical reasons why we've got into Bitcoin, and we also have technical patterns to the upside. Not just for Bitcoin, gold I think is in some sort of a bull flag that it's going to break out of. And I think once you take this 30k, you're going to do something like this. Maybe you come back and test the 25, but once this gets going, guys, it's going to get going. What do you think happens when we flip 30k? We flip this support, now resistance, and it acts as support again. Market's in full send mode. So I do genuinely believe that there's a very positive outlook for the markets. I think there's a lot of panic right now because the markets have done so well. People are always cautious and they want to sort of take risk off the table. Certainly your institutions. We are seeing a rising appetite for protection. Okay, so people looking to hedge their bets. Tech surge sends valuations to extremes, but traders don't care. Option traders aren't as optimistic. Cost of contract protection against 10% decline in Invesco QQQ, so that's a NASDAQ tool, is now 1.7 times more than cost of option that profits from a 10% rally since April 2026. So you can see that traders are now securing themselves and almost predicting that this is going to drop. So people are taking profits here. You're at a key level of resistance. You also have what looks potentially like a double top. S&P's at a very similar situation. The real interesting thing, though, is Bitcoin's at resistance and rejected from it. Gold's at resistance and rejected from it. Just taking a quick look at gold. And so is the S&P. But if the S&P and all of these can break this, the market, just like Bitcoin taking 30k, goes into full send mode. Because then this wall of worry essentially is being climbed. You're at a very critical point here. I think this actually sets up for continuation. It's a very, if you were looking at this as a kind of triangle formation, a symmetrical triangle, you could say it's probably the closest to. This is a very high up in regards to the triangle. And this is pointing, I think, to upside. So I think broadly when you do cross-market analysis, things don't look that bad. I think it's natural to expect a pullback here. The real question is, where does this resolve? Does it resolve here? Does it resolve at 26? Or does it have to go back and revisit the 25k neckline for upside continuation? Ultimately, I do expect upside. I think one thing to watch is the VIX. The VIX saw a nice little jump, but the correlation with the VIX is when it's at high points, stock market's at low points. Looking at the S&P, this is the VIX is the S&P volatility index. Typically, volatility is not a good thing. You can see these high points, low points. It's now at a low point. The market's at a high point. People are worried, just like these traders over here, that essentially the VIX is going to push up. Now, it could do that, and you could end up with something like that. But I think the VIX is actually going to come down into these levels here over the not too distant future, and certainly take these first. And I think that results in something like this. I honestly, and I'm going to say this, and it's going to sound crazy. And please, if anyone is interested, do go and check out the Patreon video yesterday. I think you could see new all-time highs in the stock market. Gold's already basically at new all-time highs. The FTSE is, you see lots of different stocks that are. European 50, I think. It's very interesting. And I think broadly, if you look at what's took markets to the downside, the very same thing's going to take them to the upside. In regards to tight monetary policy, they're going to have to go back to a loose monetary policy. It's just the way things are. And I think this is why I was going to bring this up, because essentially the problem you've got with a lot of banks out there, and generally any debt is that it needs refinancing at some point. And now that refinancing issue, just like people's mortgages that don't have fixed mortgages, they've had to refinance at way higher rates. That's not just a sort of retail issue. That becomes corporate and so on and so forth, which is why this hiking regime cannot continue and the Fed's going to have to bring rates down. If everyone right now had to refinance debt at 5%, and it'd likely be more than that if you're getting it from a bank, that's just what the Fed's charging banks, boy oh boy, you'd see just a collapse. And I do believe in our lifetime, this is very interesting, Goldman estimates the debt racked up by China's provincial government at 2.3 trillion. I do believe in our lifetime we're going to see mass debt default on US dollar debt. I do 100% think that's going to happen. I think it's going to devalue the entire system. And this is really what Bitcoin was made for. We saw with the hashtag banking crisis, a lot of kind of, I think, bullish things for Bitcoin and gold. And I think right now this is just a healthy pullback that ultimately results to upside. I understand that I'm one of the more optimistic people right now, but we were optimistic when everyone was absolutely pessimistic down here at the start of the year. And it's served us right so far, and I believe it's going to continue to do so. And right now we're looking at some absolutely fabulous opportunities in the altcoin markets to take to the upside. So I think that's really all I've got for you. Ethereum ICO participants awaken after 7.7 years. There's always a whale that's not been present for years awakening, guys. Take it all with a pinch of salt. Ultimately, we have a bullish outlook. And we think that, this is just a healthy pullback. This, by the way, was beautiful in regards to where we put our 3-wave. Are we going to see something like this? Stick to the plan. And this has been a plan, by the way, since down here. If we look at something like Cardano, for example. Sorry, that's Link, which has just been a pain in the backside. I mean, range traders just loving this. Once it breaks out that range, guys, it's gone. So this is something that we're looking at. Altcoins are at resistance, Bitcoin's at resistance, stock market resistance. It's going to take a little bit of a step back, a run up, a jump to get over these key levels. But once you're over them, guys, I think it's very much blue skies. And we'll see. There is this sell in May and come back in St. Leger's Day still to be played out. But we'll keep you up to date with all that. So expect a volatile week, guys. Could be better than expected. I think it's going to be largely a mixed bag. I do have to apologize. I don't follow and look at the reports of these individual stocks. However, ultimately, we are still optimistic despite the blood in the streets, and we are looking at altcoins and even Bitcoin potentially as an opportunity with this pullback. Certainly, if it gets down to 25k and retest the neckline, that's something that we'll be buying. And we've got points for invalidation of where our entire thesis is wrong, and we have to swallow our pride and then say, okay, new lows are on the tables or a double bottom or something along that line. That's all I've got for you in this video, guys. If you enjoyed the content, like us, appreciate it as a comment, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Thanks a lot for watching. See you in the next.